Hello and welcome to the Noah & Iron podcast with your host Lily Busby. This week I am joined by Caoimhe Clements, who is about to finish her master's degree in journalism. Whilst working throughout her career, Caoimhe has experienced a series of panic attacks resulting in her having to take sick leave whilst balancing her studies. She now wants to raise awareness of panic attacks and reduce the stigma that treatments such as therapy would entail. In this episode, we will talk about how this has impacted her personal and professional life. But before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so my name is Caoimhe Clements. I am 25 years old and I'm currently studying a master's in journalism at Ulster University. I did my undergrad at Ulster University also in photography and video. So I've always been that kind of like creative person.
You've been quite successful in your journalism career so far. You've done loads of freelance articles and you did a placement in Belfast Live over the summer. How does that feel to have that all behind you?
Yeah, so part of my course was we had to do a summer placement from like 3 to 6 weeks. I was really fortunate to have my placement for about 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks at Belfast Live. That was very fun in terms of I got to work hybrid, which means I got to work from home, but also in the office. So their office is based in like city centre in Belfast, just off Castle Court. And it was so fun, like going in to see the newsroom when breaking news was coming in, like how fast these professional journalists work to get it live and see it on Twitter, like getting seen behind the scenes. So it was definitely a moment of like, I want to do this in my future career. So it definitely was a highlight of the year.
And you're also the host of Optimistic Waves. Can you tell me a bit about that?
So during lockdown, when everyone was going through like so much anxiety, so much depression because their lives was so isolated from normality, I felt that as well. So I started my own podcast called Optimistic Waves, which the name broken down. So optimistic means to be hopeful about the future. And waves is the psychology term for we have to surf the waves of emotions in life. Like you're not always going to be happy. You have to feel a range of emotions, whether that's happy, sad, anxiety. That's just what life is. So throughout that podcast, I've spoken to Aware and I've spoken to Pure Mental and I've spoken to about a Belfast Telegraph journalist called Niamh Campbell. I've spoken to award-winning poet called Niamh McNally. So all those professional people coming together to talk about different aspects of mental health has been so interesting. And from that, people have liked it. So as long as people are getting some message out of it that helps them, then I feel like I've done my job.
And in your podcast, they all speak about mental health. But you also have talked about mental health yourself.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'll call myself like a mental health advocate because I feel like an advocate is someone who constantly every day is doing something to fight mental health, but I will talk about it. When I was doing my undergrad in Belfast, they have a charity called Mind Your Mood, and it's basically a student-led charity for students, and I was part of that for 2 years, and within that we went up to Stormont. We held like tea and coffee breaks throughout the week to help students take a wee break from studying, especially during deadline season. We would have held like little workshops. We also took training under the charity Young Minds. So if someone wanted to like speak to one of us or like gain help, maybe if they wanted like counselling or whatever, we could then help them to proceed to that next level.
Amidst all your successes in journalism, I'm also aware you had to focus on your own personal struggles.
Yeah, that's right. So during my master's, which I started in Coleraine campus of Ulster Universities, about like 3-4 months in, I started to feel quite unwell. Obviously at the time didn't really pass too marks on it because I thought it was just stress with like studying for law exams, which is obviously quite stressful and pressurizing. But then in around February of this year, 2023, I took my first ever panic attack. And I recognize it as a panic attack because I feel like when people speak about it, you kind of have an idea of what it was. But I never realized the extent of how scary these experiences are. Your mind is so convinced that you're literally going to die, which in itself is quite terrifying. And then you feel not in control of your own body. You would have like symptoms of like sweating, shivering. Your mind is going like 100 miles per hour. You can't calm your breathing. Your heart's racing. it's very overwhelming and it feels like you can't trust your own body. So that happens, and then in the same week I took another one, and then I was like, I'm so unwell, I need to go home. So I then went on sick leave for the rest of my degree, and obviously that was not planned when I started the degree, which was kind of like, this is annoying because it's not meant to be this way. So throughout, from like February up until really now, I've been like going through like this healing process. I went on anxiety meds to help deal, which have been so great. And I don't feel this urge of panic every single day. So for about 4 or 5 months throughout this year, I went through stages of like, I was so terrified of leaving my own house. I was so terrified to like walk down the street by myself, like things that should be so normal. And I was going from like living on the North Coast, like 2 hours away from home, someone who loves their own company, someone who loves going to get coffee or take myself out for lunch, like love spending time by myself, to like terrified of being alone. That was quite scary. But I feel like I'm now at a stage now where I've had it to extend my master's degree. I had to make the decision of that I can't submit it when it was meant to be submitted back in August. I was meant to originally graduate in December 2023. I won't graduate now until next summer, which is completely fine with me. Obviously, when I made that decision, it was kind of sad because it's not meant to be this way, but maybe it is in a sense because I need to be better when I graduate. So sometimes we have to make decisions for our health rather than what we originally expected.
And what sort of process did you have to go through to do that? Because I know a lot of people would be really terrified of doing that.
So for me to make that decision, I feel like there was a lot of like self-reflect of like, what is the difference between what I want versus what is best for me? And I feel like what was best for me in that moment was to allow myself to have extra time, because I was looking at it in like a bigger scale where like in 5 years time, I'm not going to remember me waiting 6 months to graduate. It's not going to matter, because if you look at your life in the long term, like 6 months waiting to graduate is such a small proportion of time. And once I have the degree, no one is going to ask. So going through that process was a lot of self-reflecting. I chose to postpone it because that was what was best for me at the time. Obviously experiencing a lot of fatigueness triggered, like I wasn't able to work every day on my university work, and just pushing by every day. Obviously spoke to family and friends about how I was feeling. Some of my friends and family encouraged me to like go speak to like therapy, which honestly has been one of the best things that I've done. I started my first therapy session in August, and throughout the last few months I've gone from someone who's literally terrified of being anywhere alone for like 5 minutes to like someone who's now rebuilding who they were. So the process has been a lot of emotions. I went from like a lot of overwhelmness to like frightenedness to like just terrified all the time to like I can actually feel calm now. I can actually start to enjoy life. My body is no longer in survival mode.
And what was it sort of like, first of all, like going into the therapy? Like, were you apprehensive at first?
So I'm aware that there's a lot of stigma around therapy. I feel like when someone says, oh, I'm going to attend therapy or I might attend this, there can be a lot of reaction of like, oh, what's wrong with them? I feel like therapy is not that big of a deal because you're simply going to talk about your mental health. So like similar to like if you have to go speak to like a GP, no one seems like that's weird. Like you're literally just going to speak to someone about your physical health. So I feel like the approach should be the same if someone's like, I'm going to speak to a therapist. So I wasn't really nervous, but I was overwhelmed in the sense that I knew I had to go in here and withdraw all my emotions, whether they were like angry, frustration, happy, sad. I had to like let them out, because what we do as human beings is that our emotions are like energy and they're stored in our body and they have to come out some way. So I would rather release those emotions in a healthy way, in a safe space, in a room with a trained therapist. So at the start, definitely was challenging. But as we went on each week, the trust that we built together, me and my therapist, was great. And now I look forward to going to therapy, and I definitely feel like it has helped me through my healing process and become like whole again, instead of like being this person who I was broken into like little pieces.
And it's actually amazing that you've done so much work whilst going through that. Can you tell us a bit about how you balanced all that?
I honestly have no idea, but I suppose a part of it was that my degree, journalism, makes me very happy, and I feel like I've had so much experience so far, which I'm so grateful for. Like, I did the elections in May, and when Joe Biden was over visiting in April, I also was part of the press team. I have done freelance work. I wrote for over 4 publications in Northern Ireland. So definitely because I have that love and like enjoyment when it comes to journalism, I love telling stories. That kept me going. So even though I was fighting like fatigueness, serious panic attacks, serious anxiety, so much stress, there was a part of me that was like, it won't be like this forever. We have to keep going. So even if it did take me longer to write an article because I was experiencing so much, I knew I'd get there in the end. And once you like open up your phone and you see your articles been published, it honestly is one of the best feelings that people are reading your stuff. And normally when I've interviewed people, I'm telling a story about their life, and like just the messages you receive afterwards of like, you know, thank you so much, you've honestly made my day. Like those kind of messages are like the sweetest things ever. So little things like that generally does give me the energy to keep on going as a journalist.
So it's like it sort of like helped you like a therapeutic thing as well, that you were like writing and stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Like I've always enjoyed the writing process. I've enjoyed writing when I was younger, even when I was doing my undergrad in photography. Getting things out on paper is quite therapeutic, as you say. One of the coping mechanisms that I have developed is journaling. I love journaling my thoughts. Even if it's not asking myself a specific question when journaling, but just like getting the words on paper, just letting them out, because even if you feel like you don't really want to say out loud to someone, at least you're releasing it in a safe space, like it's in a book, no one knows where it is. And I think that's so healthy.
And a lot of people would be sort of like, okay, so I'm feeling the same, but you know, what else can I do to sort of get to where you are?
So I feel like in university culture, we have to be aware that you most likely are not going to go into university, complete your 3 years or 4 years without feeling something that is health related, whether that's just solely mental health or another physical situation. I think there are so many people that, I don't know the actual percentage, but there is like a majority of people that do drop out of university due to like mental health or physical health reasons. And I feel like during my time in uni, there hasn't been that talked about enough. So I feel like if someone is listening to this and they're going through maybe like, whether it's an anxiety period or like so much stress, or maybe it's a more serious physical health condition, that like, it's okay to take extra time. Like if you have to take like a year out of your degree just so you get better, like that's okay. Because in a sense, if you don't take care of yourself, you're going to experience serious stress, which eats away at your body, and people get really fatigued, and you're going to run yourself down into like burnout, which is going to result in like you're not going to be able to function to do work. So it's okay to like admit that like I'm a little bit weaker right now. I need to be vulnerable and be like, hey, I need help.
And what's your plans for the future now?
So because I have postponed my course, I was meant to graduate now in December 2023. I won't graduate now until summer 2024, but that is okay. It is kind of scary because I really do not know what is next. But to have graduation like 7 or 6 months down the line is something to look forward to. Aiming throughout all the health challenges, like I did it.
I think it's amazing as well, like the fact you've been able to deal with all of, you know, the panic attacks and then also do a master's. That's pretty cool. So for listeners listening to this, what would the main takeaways be?
I think the first takeaway would be, whether you're in university or you're going to university or you're in school, it's okay to like admit to someone you trust that like, I'm not feeling 100%. I feel like I need to take a break. Taking a break is not failure. Taking a rest is not failure. Those things are still productive. You're admitting that you need help and you're caring for yourself. So if you need to take time off your degree or ask for an extension on a deadline, just do it. Because at the end of your degree, once you have your degree, that's it. And you get to move on to the next chapter of your life. No one is ever going to put you down just because you didn't make that deadline or you need extra help.
Well, is there anything else you would like to add?
One thing I would like to add is we need to really promote better health, especially mental health in universities. More support systems would be great. Maybe teaching people how to have those really healthy mental health conversations, because it is so normal to have those conversations daily with your friends. And I think what is more important is that teaching young people how to really look after themselves and not put shame on them just because they need extra help. That's okay. So definitely don't shame yourself if you need help. Go get help if you need it. It's okay. And there's always someone out there that actually generally cares about you.
Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. Till next time, stay tuned and we'll talk later.